Welcome to the latest version. I'm your host, Betsy Bush. What does retirement look like to you? Long days on the golf course, late morning coffee on the deck? My guest, Marc Sheinbaum, took a different route, one that led to writing his first novel and getting into the weeds of publishing and marketing it. He has some great advice to share about his journey to becoming a writer. Marc, welcome to the latest version. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you, Betsy. Thanks for having me, and thank you for that very gracious introduction.
Great. After a long career in financial services, you retired maybe a little early than most people think of at 58. And I'm wondering, when we talked about your plans for retirement, it was clear that you had a plan for how you would spend your time. Clearly not someone who was just going to sit back and relax too much.
Right. Well, that's very true. I mean, I knew, retirement was probably the word I didn't use, and actually didn't even use it around my house too much because my wife kept saying, "You're too young to retire."
I hate the word retirement, by the way.
Yeah, no, it's really, it was a transition to another stage and another part of my life. And I knew I wanted to do something very different than what I'd been doing. And I was fortunate enough to be able to do it financially, to not have to worry about that part of it. But nevertheless, I still was left with, okay, well, not just how am I going to fill up my time? That was not, what I wanted the next stage of my life to be. I wanted to do something very fulfilling and very engaging, and something that I really cared about. And, I remember somebody asked me a question once, or is it, one thing you want to do, or one job, or a portfolio of things? And I really did kind of look at it as a portfolio of things that I wanted to do, which is probably one of the most important things to me, coming out of a job where I was always kind of doing one thing, to try lots of different things. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't really sure what was going to be the direction. I did know that I wanted writing to be part of that. So although I got involved with several boards of directors, both on the not-for-profit side and the for-profit side, and did some volunteer work, did some consulting work, advisory work, one of the very first things I did was sign up for a writer's workshop. I didn't start out with the intention of I'm doing this because I want to write a book. Mm-hmm. I just knew I wanted to write again. It was something that was inside of me as a very young age. I mean, I thought I was going to be a writer when I was in high school. I loved writing. I loved creative writing. I loved storytelling. I was a big daydreamer even mm-hmm. in school, so there was always kind of stories in my head. I thought maybe I'd be a journalist when I came out of college, or came out of high school, I guess. I guess, very honestly, I didn't have the courage back then to pursue that as a career. I think I tell people this story all the time, how I wrote a letter to a journalist when I was 16 years old, and I said, "Hey, I'm thinking about being a journalist and writing, and what would you suggest in terms of colleges? What should I major in? What should I be looking for?" And he said, "Well, if hard work and little reward is what you want out of life, then, a writing career is for you." And, I was a kid from Sheepshead Bay, Brooklyn, and didn't have a lot growing up. And I knew one thing I wanted to do was to have some financial success. So that letter didn't really appeal to me. And I said, this guy's trying to tell me something. So, and I wish I could have been one of those people like Scott Turow and John Grisham and others who, pursued a career in law or something and then wrote novels on the side. Mm-hmm. I actually did try to do that a little bit when I first graduated college, and had a job that, was pretty intense. And then I'd come home at night and try. I took a stab at writing a screenplay initially, and it just, for me, the share of mind wasn't there. Mm-hmm. I was focused on my career. I was focused on the job. I just didn't have the brain cells to sit down and 5 a.m. and be creative. It just didn't work for me. So I said, I'll get back to it someday. And someday was a lot later than I probably intended when I was in my early 20s. So as I said, when I had the time, I enrolled in this workshop, and it was very beginning level. Mm-hmm. The place had, in the Westport Writers Workshop, they had many options from beginner to advanced. So I started at the very beginning with these writing prompts, finish this sentence, take the next 20 minutes, finish this sentence, write something, and then we'll share it with the class. And I remember being just completely, freaked out is the wrong term, but like share with the class. I mean, it was like I felt so exposed,
Sure,
that I was going to be judged by, my writing or the idea. But I will tell you that the energy I felt, I still remember that first writing prompt and that those writing classes, just sitting there and creating something in the 20 minutes, just concentrating. It was just an amazing feeling, and it was unbelievable that I was able to kind of conjure it back up from 40 years. It had been since I've done anything like it. So I really loved it, and the novel just evolved from those early prompts. It wasn't like I thought, well, I'll just keep doing these prompt things and I'll learn from this. And next thing I know, I went to the more advanced classes and started stretching out these prompts into storylines. And I remember, one of the proctors said, "Oh, well, you're working on a novel here." And I said, "Well, oh, yeah, I'm working on,
sure.
It wasn't like I was consciously working on a novel, but I said, yeah, I guess I'm working on a novel. But it wasn't until I had maybe 50 to 100 pages that I said, I had a vision of the arc of where the story was going to go and how I wanted it to end. Mm-hmm. And I also, in my mind, had a kind of a theme of what I was trying to get to, which was this theme of forgiveness,
right.
Which was kind of important to me and getting there. So I had no idea how I was going to get characters from point A to point B to point C, but I knew where ultimately I was trying to get to. So that's a long-winded answer of your question, but
yeah.
it's a lot about what the journey looked like.
Well, those writing workshops are such a great entry point for people who want to explore this idea of writing. There are several in Westchester. There's the Sarah Lawrence has a renowned writing program, and there's one at Hudson Valley Writers Center in Scarborough, New York, up the river, and I'm sure a lot of colleges, community colleges, have these sorts of things. So people who are interested in kind of exploring that, what was it like having? And I'm assuming this is what yours was like, where you do 2 pages and you read it, and then you get responses, right? Do people give you your feedback? What was that like?
Yeah, it was. Again, you feel very exposed in those situations, and typically it was you'd work on in the initial prompt when you're doing it in the class, but then when you move on to the advanced classes, you're writing it at home during your time, and then you bring in 4, 5, 6 pages that you read, and this typically the workshop is 5 or 6 people, and we're each doing that, and we're each critiquing it. Mm-hmm. And it's as I said, it takes a while to get from where you feel confidence is the wrong term, because you never feel really confident, but you are certainly sitting there very exposed to what people's thoughts are, but people are very generous. I mean, nobody's ripping you apart. It's a very safe place.
Yes.
These workshops, everybody's in the same boat, right? We're all trying to work on the craft. And, I will tell you that to your point, you don't necessarily have to be setting out to write a novel to go into and get a lot out of a writing workshop. Some people working on, there are memoir workshops. Mm-hmm. People just want to put their story down. There are poetry workshops. There are screenwriting workshops. Yeah. And there are some novel ones. And I think, and even some of the ones I've been at, the people have been, really terrific writers, but also nobody's really sitting there with 5 books to their name. I can think of maybe 2 other people that have come to the final point where they've actually published a full-length novel. Short stories have been published in magazines. So, right. Again, you don't. For me, as I said, the satisfaction and the excitement and the feeling I got out of just writing was worth the price of admission. Right. I'm very goal-oriented, though. So once the novel idea got there, I said, well, I'm finishing this thing. And and took it all the way. But it was just something for me. And by the way, it's not. It was a goal to get it out there, but of course, every time you set new goals, you achieve them, you set what's the next one. So, for me, it was not, somebody made a comment to me, okay, well, that's fantastic. You wrote this book, what's next on your bucket list? And I said, I didn't take offense to it, but a little bit, because I said, this wasn't a bucket list thing. It's something I really enjoy doing. And I'm already halfway through trying to write, the next novel. And as you said in your intro, I'm become obsessive with trying to learn the business side of it, which is not a lot of fun.
Right.
I'd much rather write my next book than figure out how to market and get it out there. But, once you write something and you start getting some decent response to it, you feel like, okay, well, I want to do everything I can to get it out there so people can enjoy it.
Right. So when you're writing a book at, at the age that you're at, which is, the age I'm at, I think.
No offense.
There's always this feeling of what is the goal? Is the goal to write a 1 million copy bestseller that's out there papering the world? Or is it just to have your voice heard and to see if you can do it? Is the writing of the book the goal in itself, or is there something more to it?
Yeah, it's a great question. As I said, the goals shift around. Initially, the goal, as I described, was just starting to write again. And then the goal was, to actually, learn and get my work together so that it actually, was a quality piece, both in terms of the writing and the production. And, now the goal for that book is to, I don't want to say generate sales, but to generate readers, because I am, trying to, again, to me, anybody that goes through this process and gets something published, you always start with friends and family, and that's very gratifying, and people have been very kind. But then, what's really cool is when people that don't know you at all start reading it and saying and giving you positive feedback. That's pretty cool. I think my friends and family might be a little hesitant to give me some tough feedback, but the great unwashed of the readership out there won't pull any punches. So getting it out to them has been great, and so I'm at the stage now where I'm not really asking any more friends and family. I am out there with promotion sites and trying to find readers and generate a readership for my work. And I think I might have mentioned here that getting reviews from people I don't know is much more satisfying than getting reviews from people I do know. And then recently I got a review from somebody whose headline just said only one book. I mean, he was like, could you please write another one? That I can't wait to hear more.
Wow.
So that was pretty cool. That's very energizing. That's very motivating.
Your experience is not that different from someone who has started a podcast. And of course your friends and family are going to love it, but to find that, the listener who doesn't know you, but who is really tuned to what your podcast is about and is, supportive and wants to hear more, that there's nothing more gratifying than that. And
I think it's a very similar piece. Exactly. I think, you're trying to generate an audience, and you can't be sensitive about, it's not for everybody, right? And you have to, and there is a lot to having a target audience, knowing who you're going after and how you attract them. So I do think, I think the podcast world and the self-publishing book world are very similar in that there's a lot of people out there trying to learn how to generate an audience and put a product out that is going to be high quality to that audience.
Yes, Marc, we haven't mentioned, I'm embarrassed to say this, we haven't mentioned the title of your book, which is Memories Live Here.
Right.
And can you give us a very brief synopsis of what it is? I'm about 60 pages in, and it's Is it science fiction? Is it a thriller? Is it speculative fiction? How would you describe it?
Yeah, that's great. It's funny. I've used each of those terms at different stages as I described the book, and I would not say it's science fiction, and again, I've learned a lot of this. I didn't start with a genre instead of writing this genre. I started with an idea and I wrote it, and then as I started, exposing people to it, I get different reactions to it. But I think it is most closely a thriller, mystery thriller. Some say suspense, and the reason it's all over the place in that genre is it does kind of have a lot of these different elements to it. So I'm very comfortable saying it's cross genre. But anyway, so the story is about three brothers, adult brothers. One is a artificial intelligence engineer, and he's working out in Silicon Valley on this top secret project in a Google-like company to use historical novels and literature and biographies to bring back the greatest leaders in history in order to work with today's leaders to be able to talk, advise them, talk sense into them. So that aspect is where people sometimes get feeling it's a little science fiction, but I think your term speculative fiction is closer because similar to Michael Crichton, which is probably the one author people have said it has that kind of feel to, is you're taking some part of science or technology today and kind of stretching a little bit and saying, what if, right?
Where might
nobody
this
would
lead
argue
us,
artificial intelligence doesn't have these kind of capabilities, but what if you could do something like this? Anyway, so the aspect that but the heart of the story is about that main character and then his two brothers. One is a investment banker who is kind of down to his last nickel. He's got a gambling addiction, and he hasn't signed a deal in years, and he lives well beyond his means in New York and Central Park West with an apartment he can't afford. He's about to sign a deal to kind of put him over the top. And then there's a third brother who has been more of a down-on-your-luck guy his whole life. The story then takes off when there's a cyber attack, which is very timely, right? Against the AI project and against the investment bankers project at the same time.
Wow.
And all evidence seems to point to the third brother as being the perpetrator of it. So, so now you have all this whole family dynamic of why would these two brothers even suspect that a third brother would do this to them? And then the last piece I'll tell your listeners is when the brothers discover their dead mother's diaries, then the whole story kind of takes off into this realm where it leads them to an encounter with the mother's diaries through artificial intelligence to discover a lot of family secrets that they thought were buried with their mother. So,
oh wow,
that's kind of the gist of it.
Okay,
so you can hear why. So there's family mystery. There is, I'll say, more speculative fiction than science fiction, and then there's this thriller aspect to it. So that's why when you ask that question, it's kind of hard to nail it down.
Well, it's what I've been reading so far. It's a real page turner, and it's a lot of fun. So that's Memories Live Here by Marc Sheinbaum. So just so my listener can look that up on Amazon, and you can get a Kindle version for.
Yes.
So that's something to look at. The self-publishing part is a very interesting aspect of your journey, not only as a writer, but someone who has to now kind of take on the marketing and promotion aspects. Why did you go the self-publishing route? Did you try the more traditional route with established publishers and things like that?
Yeah, look, I did. Not for a long period of time. I learned enough about the traditional publishing world to say that it was going to be a longer haul than I wanted to go through. Again, it's probably the impatient business guy that came out in that one. But when I finished the book and I knew I had a good product, then you're starting this query process.
Mm-hmm.
And the way you do it in the traditional publishing world is you find an agent, and then the agent has to go find a publisher,
right.
And then it goes on from there. And so finding an agent, could take 2 weeks or it could take 2 years.
Mm.
And then I heard many stories of agents. You get an agent, and agents can take anywhere from 2 weeks to 2 years to find a publisher. And then the publisher could take another year and a half to get the work out. So, and that's going on while in this parallel universe, there's this whole world of self-publishing, which I was reading about, which was much more widely accepted today than maybe 10 years ago. Widely used,
right,
and with a lot of tools to do a very professional job. And so I spent maybe 6 months querying the agent world, and the infamous slush pile, which I think you and I have talked about.
Yeah.
And you find out that there's some junior agent that just came out of school that's doing the first screen. It kind of reminds me of the college application process all over again. So being an impatient person and also liking to roll up my sleeves and learn, and also just talking to a lot of people in the business, I decided, look, let's, at least for this first one, let's learn what is going on behind the scenes. Do it, and I was always, again, very focused on, I was not going to just slop something together. If I was going to do it, I was going to make it a professional book and format it. And, so I had all the, I had editors, I had development editors, I had copy editors. And so they were very engaged and helped me get the product in good shape. And then I used a lot of people. And by the way, the author community is a very generous community. So you can get lots of thoughts and advice and recommendations from people out there. It's not hard to get answers, even from some of your favorite authors. Everybody has a website.
Wow.
Everybody has a website, and there's always a contact me here. And, I've had some nice conversations with some very successful authors. And they're very generous with their thoughts and advice and references. So I found some great tools. And, so I spent probably about 6 to 8 months, just, doing all the production work, learn how important a cover is, because that's, a book, a cover of a book is critically important to attracting the right people, blurbs, all that stuff, getting reviews. So, it was a lot of work, but I learned a lot about it. And by the way, what I also learned was, which probably put me over the hump to saying, let's go this route, is, even if you get a professional, Random House publisher, you still are expected to do a lot of this marketing and distribution on your own. I mean, they obviously get more support if you're John Grisham with the full page ads, but most others are not getting that. So you really do have to roll up your sleeves at that part. And many of the publishers and agents, one of the questions they're asking you is, what kind of marketing to do? What's your social media?
Right. How many followers do you have already? Who else is, who are you bringing along with your product to us, as opposed to we're going to help you, do all of this from ground zero.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think the next book, I maybe will be a little more patient now that I've got the first book out there to explore. And there's this other world now called hybrid publishers, where you kind of work in a hybrid fashion. That seems to be somewhat attractive for me. It would be nice to have a partner in doing this next time, but we'll see. We'll see. Well, I know there'll be a next time.
We've touched on a lot of the through lines that I've had in this podcast, from the beginning. And the first is going back to youthful passions, whether it's art or music or writing, but also coming out of, whatever tunnel we were in our working lives, and realizing how much things have changed. Since before we went into the tunnel, like the gatekeepers, media gatekeepers that used to be there aren't there anymore. Like self-publishing a book, as opposed to being at the mercy of, some editor somewhere who says yay or nay.
Right.
You've talked a lot about it, a lot about this so far, but it's also needing to get up to speed on social media and how nimble are we on Instagram and YouTube and all these different things. Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, I will readily admit that I've been slow on the uptake on the social media, and that's to my detriment, right? I mean, I think my advice to be anybody that wanted to get in this space, podcasting, the same thing, anything you're trying to market. Yeah. If you don't figure out the social media angle, in today's day and age, you're not going to get much traction. So I've relied on, LinkedIn more.
Mm-hmm. Sure. I found LinkedIn to be very helpful.
The social media is critical, and I've, I have a Facebook page, and I have a business Facebook page for the book. Instagram, I've just kind of played with, and I've been told that's more important. Started to gather a email list, which in book publishing, they say that is the number one thing you can do is get a email marketing list for your next book. I mean, it's really the interesting thing about the marketing and publishing world is the best advice I've gotten, and they will tell you the most important piece of advice I've gotten, even beyond social media, for marketing and promoting yourself as an author, is if you want to do one thing that's most important after you've published your first book, is write your second book and your third book. Because as just Betsy, like with you, you've got, your podcast, you don't just have one episode, right? You have multiple episodes. Yeah. So if you're generating a audience for that, they might, maybe if I'm so lucky, they'll tune in because they've heard about me, but then they've discovered you, and they're gonna look at your other podcasts in the series and then become a fan, a listener of other things you're doing.
Yep, I'm binge worthy, that's for sure.
Sorry,
binge worthy. Yeah,
right, exactly, and that's the same as with books, and most of the authors will tell you, you really can't get the leverage and scale to invest your time and to make your time and money pay back with just one book. You need to get that leverage. So if they're coming to look at Memories Live Here and they like it, they're going to now go read my second and third book, or vice versa. If they, that one reviewer I said who said only one book, I mean, he's encouraging me, but clearly he would have bought the second book, right? And clearly. And so the point is, if you're investing time and money in promoting yourself, it's better to have multiple products. So that's everybody has told me. And by the way, they'll also tell you that's really important for your own mental well-being, because the publication and marketing can be difficult, time-consuming, not very gratifying. Payback is not always looking terrific. So remember why you're doing this. You're doing this because you want to write. So get back in the seat and write, and everything else will come with it. So I think that's, and there's not an author out there I've spoken to who won't tell you, get your butt back in the seat and write the next book.
Wow. How long did it take you to really write the book? Because now you're talking about time spent putting the finishing touches on the product after it was written. So I'm curious to know what your time frame was when you look back at it. When did you really get serious and start writing?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I would honestly say it was 2 years to come up with a viable first draft. And again, remember, I was just learning the craft, going from prompt things to really getting serious with it. And then after those 2 years, I spent probably another, I'd say 7 to 9 months just completely diving in to the book from the beginning to the end. Editing is probably the wrong term, but I guess you'd say it is editing, because I literally was the rewrites, the connecting the dots, making sure there was consistency of the voice of each of the characters. I actually had to redraw one of the three brothers completely because I couldn't get his motivation down in my head. So I had to go back to the beginning and make, but literally when you, I really describe it as a large jigsaw puzzle, right? And that's kind of how all the pieces need to fit together. And so, the writing the first 2 years, I'd say was a lot of on and off. Well, for those 7 months, I literally lived inside the story. I mean, I completely lived inside the book. I think I might have mentioned it was like being in the Matrix of a movie. I was in there, completely immersed in each of the three characters. And I even, took the book apart and reordered it, put it back together again. I mean, it was like a puzzle. So end to end, I'd say 3 years. And my goal is, but that was again a lot of beginning in it, a lot of start and stop, and not really. I mean, I was learning things like point of view. I was learning things like voice. Those were just part of the craft I was learning while I was doing this. So hopefully the next time through, my goal is to have a good first draft in a little more than a year, and then so cut some time off of it. But again, I have to keep, even as I say, I have to keep reminding myself, it's not a race to the finish line. It's enjoy the process, right, and enjoy the journey, enjoy what I'm doing, enjoy the writing, feel good about it. And then, when I'm getting close, then I can kind of do that immersive thing and bring it to the finish line. But I really feel like I have, several more novels in me. So that's good. It's one of the nice things about, that word retirement. There's nobody's going to force me to retire from this, and it allows me to kind of redefine the next, as I said, the next stage of my life. Not that I don't enjoy the golf and the late afternoon coffees and stuff, but it's still good to have purpose in what you're trying to do when you wake up in the morning, and as I said, it could be a portfolio of things, and for me, that's kind of how I feel about it, with a lot of core foundation around the writing process for me.
Are you staying in the same genre for your second book, or is it something very different?
Well, for the second book, it is the same genre because it's a bit of a continuation of the storyline from the first book. But I do have aspirations to play around. I thought it's funny, as some people have defined it as speculative fiction and techno thriller. I did read a lot of Michael Crichton over the years, and I've read a lot of Dean Koontz and things like that. And but I enjoy a lot of different kinds of authors. So I would not say that I want to stick with this genre, but I will say that for me, the writing I enjoy the most are about people, about relationships, tension. And I love dialogue. I love putting myself in the shoes of characters and having it out, with each other, because it's a lot of fun putting yourself into one character and what would they say, and then putting yourself in the other character, what would they say? And that's part of what I was getting at before when I said, getting into a character's voice. That was part of the editing you have to do, is to make sure that this character wouldn't say that in this situation. You'd say something different. So I really do like that conflict kind of writing. And so that to me is more the core, as opposed to, I'm not going to, you're not going to pick up my books and say, I'm going to do you're not going to feel a great description of the flowers on the lawn and the eaves in the house. I mean, as you've read part of the book, Betsy, so you see, I kind of get right to the jugular.
Yes, it's very action oriented, I would say.
Story,
yes,
right, exactly.
Right. So, Marc, this has been a great conversation. Do you have 3 pieces of advice that you'd share with my listener who is maybe contemplating a time when they would have time to write a book?
Yeah. I mean, look, my advice, and I always am probably more than willing to tell people what they should be thinking about when it comes to the R word, the retirement word. It's you do have to kind of find what's important to you, right? You can't, everybody thinks they can write a book, and a lot of people can write a book. It's not, it's a matter of sitting down and doing it. But, as you go to this next stage, I do think, we've all earned this opportunity. I think I might tell you a story about, I was on a golf course a few summers ago with 3 other gentlemen, and 2 of them were retired and 1 was not. And I asked them, I didn't know him, and I said, well, what's your plan? What are you thinking? And he says, well, I tried retirement for a couple of years. I got bored. I went back to work. And I didn't know this guy at all, but I said, I didn't quite say it this way, but I said, you should be ashamed of yourself. I mean, you worked your butt off your entire life. You've earned the opportunity. You've been fortunate enough to have the opportunity to be here, and you can't figure out what you want to do with your time. Now, look, if you love work, that's great. I mean, I loved to work for many years. But also there were many times I didn't love work. And so, if you love what you're doing, then why would you, there's no need to do something different. But if you are at the stage where you really are unhappy and you have the wherewithal to do something different, then, many of us can figure out, what's next. But, it's not just joining a bunch of boards and being busy.
Right.
You have to be busy in something that you really care about. Don't join the board of the Philharmonic if you don't care about music. Don't join you know what I'm saying? You've got to have some passion behind whatever it is you're doing. And if it's writing, it doesn't matter. It could be writing, it could be art, it could be music, it could be language. The resources are there. You don't have to go back to college and get a master's degree in something. There's all kinds of...
Oh, there's so much now, right?
So much out there.
Yeah,
right.
Especially the world of online learning. You can listen to really interesting college lectures for free if you want to know about, Don Quixote. My husband got into a lecture on Don Quixote. He said, you can't believe how interesting this book is. And I just learned so much about it. And keeping your mind active and exploring new things is so important to... I hate to say, healthy aging or aging well, because aging is another one of those words I don't like. Yep, but it's indisputable that you need to have your mind engaged to go into, your later decades as healthy as you can be.
Yep, I think it's just being engaged, right? It's you don't think about it as trying to stay healthy. You think about just being engaged in things that you care about and being engaged in the world. And you asked about advice. The other thing I'd say is you don't put pressure on yourself that you have to figure it out on day one. Allow yourself, if you are retiring, my biggest goal the day I retired was I said I want to get bored. Just allow yourself the luxury of just getting bored for a few weeks, few months, whatever, until you kind of pop your head up and say, okay, I'm ready to try some things. And I've triaged a lot of things that I started getting involved in at the beginning that I said just didn't do it for me. I wasn't contributing. It wasn't something that, was kind of ringing the bell for me. So I graciously just said thank you and hopefully I was helpful, but I'm ready to move on to something else and tried some other things on. So, trial and error, we all did it during our career. Mm-hmm. It doesn't change when you move to this next stage. Trial and error. Or just trial and say, hey, that was fun for 3 years. Now I'm ready to do something else and keep moving. And that's great too.
Yeah. Marc Sheinbaum, this has been really, really fun talking to you. Marc is the author of Memories Live Here. Look for it on Amazon. And I think we're all looking forward to your next book.
Thank you very much, Betsy. Great. I appreciate the great conversation. I really enjoyed the topic and good luck to you, and thanks for your support.
Great. Thanks a lot, Marc. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.